programs at Bhagwan Sudha Street. It is really Swami's gift today that he has sent Brother Vishweshwar Pushpi, whom I know even before I joined the institute as a student. He was one of my inspiration, first of all, personally to become Swami's student, since I know him since 1999. When he finished, I think he finished his BCom and MBA from Puttaparthi. And Brother Vishu Pushpi is one among three brothers. So he did not want me to reveal some facts, but I'm sorry, Brother Vishu, I have to tell people about your family. Their family is literally, from a Sai family, your family. I have three brothers. Venkateshwara Pushpi, sir, he is a school teacher, high school teacher, Swami Oda boys school. He is also Swami student. The brother Sri Rameshwar Pushpi. Sri Rameshwar Pushpi from 1998 to 2005, Swami Oda Nadadilunda. Swami Oda Kuda is Swami Oda security board. So, Vishu, what I am just talking in Tamil, so I'm sure you are multilingual also. That is one more facet of Vishu. So he will understand. But so Vishu Pushpi's brothers are also into Swami's organization. His parents are also into Swami's organizations. His father is a senior engineer. But in the Odisha housing project, 1,000 homes they are constructing. So Appa he has been instrumental after the Odisha floods. Very, very close family to Swami. They are staying in Puttaparthi. More to tell about Vishu Pushpi, like our convener sir said, he is not only Mandir singer, he is the anchor for Radio Sai live program. On Thursday, if you tune into Radio Sai early morning, the voice which you hear, FM radio, 93.5 FM radio, Tamil program, we see on the Sai radio, we see Brother Vishu Pushpi's vibrant voice. So he can change, now he is very soft spoken and he is singing so melodiously. But he can also become live on the Thursday live programs. As G. Venkatraman sir, Professor G. Venkatraman sir, our teacher and most honorable, he is the head of Radio Sai, has described him in one of the articles I saw. He is the heart of Heart to Heart. Heart to Heart, and there was a journal. There's a magazine. Brother Vishu Pushpi is the pioneer of that magazine. And there are articles silently working behind the scenes since the start of WorldSpace radio when it started beaming it. From that time till today, he is one of the first and he is one of the pillars, I would say, of Radio Sai. Not only this, if you go to Radio Sai Bhajan Tutor, all of us have learned so many bhajans. His brother Vishu Pushpi who has coordinated that. Not to mention also Study Circle, which is an initiative again anchored, moderated by Brother Vishu Pushpi. So he is not only good at mandir singing, performing in front of Swami, speaking in front of Swami. Countless number of programs he has coordinated for all of the devotees across the world. Very, very humble personality, like we can see, and his brothers we have all seen, like I said, Sri Rameshwar Pushpi, Swami Oda being with Swami. It's literally Solapana Swami Oda Varaprasadam. Swami's Prasadam has been said to us today in the form. I want to tell you why he is in Chennai, which he will tell you. He is here for a very important interview which he will talk about. But despite why I am mentioning that is, on the interview in the Kartalendu, Madhyana 4:30 he was with us in that interview. He was taking some interview of some devotee. He came here, went to Tiruvedi Amman temple. He covered that. He took some photos. And from there straight to Sai Sahara. So he said, how long will I have to be in Sai Sahara? Because I want to appreciate also his sense of beauty. But our manas vande Radio Sai vaala ladha irukku. So he said, 8 o'clock can we wind up? I said 11 o'clock we can wind up. So I said Sai Sahara will not let you go. So Brother Vishu, I want to tell you so much about, I have spoken about you, not only to say this, but also to tell you that Sai Sahara is a home where Swami has invited so many people, thanks to Dr. Sundarajan, Mrs. Kalyanis, all the devotees and our convener sir and other office bearers, including Dr. Ravi Kumar from Vrindavan, Sri Amatesh Pandey, and so many of Swami's personal assistants, Sai Giridhar who is doing his speech, all of them have come here. So you have now to take the mantle. I don't want to stand between you and Sai Sahara. And I have not tried to overhype your background, but I have only spoken the truth about Vishu, which is not a complete truth. A lot of things I can go on talking about Brother Vishu. But now I hand over the mic to him so that he can talk to us about Swami. Indelible lessons learned at the Lotus Peak. That is the topic he is going to talk. I also want to mention, before he joined Radio Sai, for 1 year he was one of the first student Swami had put in the Whitefield Hospital. And Swami himself personally took him from there to Radio Sai, be in charge of Radio Sai. He has had so many experiences at very close quarters with Bhagwan. So thank you, Brother Pushpi, for coming. Thank you, Swami, for giving me this time.
As I chant the Gayatri Mantra, a very beautiful incident comes to my mind. This happened in Bhagwan's interview room many years ago. Swami asked this close devotee, "Do you know the Gayatri Mantra?" So this devotee said, "Yes, Swami, I know the Gayatri Mantra." Swami said, "Can you chant it?" So he said, "Swami, yes, I can." This devotee had this chance of doing Padaseva to Bhagwan. So even as Bhagwan was conversing with him, he was doing Padaseva. So Swami told, "Okay, chant the Gayatri Mantra." So he started chanting, and he was doing Padaseva. So he started Om Bhuvaswaha. And as he was doing Padaseva, he felt that actually Swami's feet is getting warmer. His feet is getting warmer. Now it is getting hotter. As he's chanting, his feet is getting hotter. Now it is so hot, it's red hot. He just takes his hand off. He just cannot touch Swami's body. He just takes off his hand and keeps it himself. Then he chants Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And after 2 minutes, then again he dares to touch Swami's body. That is the Lord about which we are so fortunate to know about. And before I begin, I really want to thank Bhagwan for this wonderful opportunity of being here. I had never expected that I will be here. I came on a different world, sent by Professor Venkatraman, and I cannot thank Bhagwan, for giving me this chance to be with all of you here. It feels so great. Feels so great to be here. Feels so great to speak to you about Bhagwan as I look at each one of your faces, because you feel so connected with Bhagwan. Even as I sit here and I look at the shrine, I look at the jhula, I look at this throne, so many memories just flood my mind. The shrine, when I look at it, it's somehow, to me it feels so much like Shiva, like Sai Shiva. That's the reason why actually I sang the Shiva bhajan. I really felt so much like Sai Shiva because that mood is so much like Bhagwan in Shiva Tattva. And just now we celebrated Shivratri, and when you look at Bhagwan as Shiva, so many beautiful facets that come to your mind. And the most striking to me is this. And this is so apt for this month. This month of April, March and April is a month which is very uncomfortable, not only for the reason that it is very hot and humid and all that, but for Sai devotees it's a very, very difficult month. Because memories go back, memories take you to those times when you are sitting inside Kulwant Hall and you are craning your neck to see Bhagwan, you are waiting for hours, you are waiting, looking at the edge of Mandir, when will a slight movement be there, when will Bhagwan come out, when will I can have a glimpse. It doesn't matter if I have sat for 10 hours, 15 hours, no problem. I want to see only one glimpse. I have come all the way just for one glimpse of Bhagwan. That is how darshan experience used to be when Bhagwan comes and just one glimpse and you have forgotten yourself, you have forgotten all the pains, you have forgotten all the trials and tribulations. Bhagwan may not even look at you, but he just goes round and he sits in the hall, and that is enough. He doesn't have to talk to you, he just has to sit there. That is enough for us. The moment he sits there, something happens to us. In fact, once I asked my brother, what, Swami has stopped giving interviews, Swami is not talking anymore, Swami is not giving interviews, what will happen to his mission? If I want stupidity, I asked him, what will happen to his mission? All these projects Swami has started, if Swami doesn't give interviews, you think people will come, what will happen? I said, how foolish you are. Swami doesn't have to do anything. If he comes and if he sits, that's more than enough. And when I reflected on that, how profound it is. You have, all Bhagwan has to do was just come and sit, and that itself was enough. People who have come there from so many long distances or wherever they are, they sit there, and you ask everyone after darshan, and everyone is in tears because he connects us. He connects us to what we are. His presence is enough to connect us to what we are. And if you see the last few years, what Bhagwan was doing was basically that. All these years he showered us with so much love, he showered us with so much of attention, so much of physical attention. Imagine Swami came to Chennai way back in 1945 when he was a boy of just 19. 1945 Bhagwan has been coming to this sacred land. When I came to Chennai, that's the thought that was going in my mind. How sacred is this land? And he has come after that for 65 times he has come to this land. It's not, I don't think any city has a chance. 65 times Bhagwan has come here, and today I went to the temple. Karthik brother took me there, and he told me that Swami with his divine hands has installed that yantra there. There's a Durga temple there in Annanagar. And Swami has installed yantra. If you just think about it, how profound it is. Because the only other place where Swami has installed a yantra that I know of is the meditation tree. And even now, if you go to Prashant Nilayam, and if you have ever gone to the meditation tree and if you have sat there, you will know what the power of the yantra is. You know what the power of the meditation tree is. You know why Swami has installed that in 1961. Swami had told at that time that there will come a time when this power from this, under this tree, will draw saints and sages from across the world. They will be pulled to this place. That is the power he has installed in that meditation tree. Recently we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the meditation tree. The whole area was refurbished and all that. And the other place that I know where Bhagwan has installed in yantra is Shivam. And Shivam also, like Sundaram, has a glorious history. When Swami decided on the site, even before the installation was done, Swami asked for 3 lingas to be brought to that place. And these three lingas, if you know about the history, are the 3 lingas that Bhagwan had personally given, the lingams that had emerged from his being during Shivratri celebrations, the lingams that he had done during Lingodhavam, those Hiranyagarbha lingams he had given to 3 devotees in Hyderabad, one Mr. Desikachari and one Mr. Prasad Rao and one Mr. Satyamurthy. Swami had given these 3 lingams. Swami asked all these three lingams to be brought to the sacred site that Shivam is today. Swami himself did the Trilinga Abhishekam and then he installed the yantra. That is what Shivam is. So when you look at the sites where Bhagwan has himself invested so much of power, and this is that land, so I really felt so blessed that I am here today and I could see that place. There is a marquee which says inaugurated by Bhagwan Sathya Sai Baba. I mean, this is that land. As I was talking about Shiva and the lingas came to my mind. If you look at the last few years, Bhagwan's life, and you think of the principle of Shiva, when the Samudra Manthan happened, that we read in the Puranas, the churning of the ocean happened, and when the churning of the ocean happened, there were a lot of things that came out of the ocean. You know, there were a lot of riches. There is this Kamadhenu which came out. There was the horse, Airavat, I don't know what's the name of the horse. There were so many beautiful things, seven treasures came out of the ocean, and all these were distributed among the angels, the devas, and the asuras, and everything. Everything was beautiful till then, and suddenly in the end came the halahala. And now there was a crisis. Now who is going to handle this? Because the halahala is the lethal poison of the world. It is the poison that can actually destroy the world. It can destroy the creation, because that is in essence perhaps the most deadliest of things. The creation is a mix of good and bad product. All the bad was concentrated on that. And now what to do with this? We have got all these beautiful things, but who has to handle this? No one had any clue what to do with the halahala. And Shiva came to the rescue. And we know what Shiva did. So Shiva himself drank that halahala for the sake of the world, for the sake of the humanity. And it was so lethal that, he almost sacrificed himself in a sense that he did not allow it to go down, because he could even destroy himself. He kept it on the throat, and that's how we adore Shiva as Nilakanta, as the epitome of sacrifice, as someone who, unmindful of his own benefits, unmindful of his own appearance, unmindful of anything about himself, decided to give up himself for the sake of humanity. And when I look at Swami's life, this is what always keeps coming to my mind again and again, especially in the last 3-4 years, when you look at how Bhagwan has spanned his so-called departure from the physical frame. If you look at Bhagwan's life, in 1999, Swami started the Lingodbhavam. That was the time when Swami sort of resurrected this practice of Lingodbhavam. Until then, Lingodbhavam had stopped. Then suddenly in 1999, Swami, out of the blue, performed the Lingodbhavam. And in that discourse, of course, he very categorically mentioned that all of you who have seen this Lingodbhavam will not have been birth. Why Lingodbhavam? Swami said that when the divine comes and when the divine asks us to follow his teachings, when the divine gives us those beautiful messages, it never registers. When the divine says that this is the message of the Vedanta, this is what is the essence of the Shastra, this is what is the crux of the Vedas, this is what is the essence of the scriptures, we still do not get it. We still do not, it doesn't strike us. We don't really take that much of interest, but only when the divine suddenly creates something, when the divine creates a lingam, when the divine creates something which we always thought was superhuman, only when we shake. It is only to kind of shake us that the Lord performs a superhuman feat. In fact, he mentioned that. Why do I do Lingam? It's only to shake humanity, to know, hello, do you know in whose presence you are? Do you know whom you are dealing with? Every time you take it so lightly, do you know who is the one who has come? I mean, for me to think about it, the ultimate sacrifice is the infinite Lord taking the trouble of confining himself to a form. You know how big a sacrifice that is? Because he's so bound by time and space and the elements and us. I think that is the greatest of sacrifices. And he wants to lead a life just like you and me. He wants to lead a normal life. So how difficult it is for God to lead a life of a human. how difficult it is. He knows everything about you, but still when you come in front of him, he has to smile and he has to act as if he knows nothing about you, and he has to bless you. He has to shower all this blessing. You think, Swami, please, you have all your doubts, you have all your anxieties. What if Swami knows about this? What is Swami knows, but still he will come and he will talk to you very sweetly, and you feel, oh my God, God is so loving. Yeah, he is so loving. But do you know what it is for Swami? For him to lead the life of a human is so difficult, and that is what he did all his life, trying to lead a life of a human. Why? So that we will feel inspired. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that I do not have to perform any duty. I do not have even the slightest obligation to perform any duty. I don't have to do anything. But I still do. Why do I do it? Because you will copy the right thing. Otherwise, if I do not do, then you will say, God also himself does it, why should I do? So that you will copy, that is why I do. And that is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, that duty. You have to do your duty. And when Bhagavan came down as a human, because that is what we saw him doing. He just doing the duty of leading a perfect, simple human being. I mean, do you know that when Bhagavan was in the Partha Mandiram days, there was no private quarters, there was this well. And Swami used to have bath in that same well in which all the other devotees used to have bath. The Partha Mandiram, he never had a room. He used to go out for his ablutions taking a lota. He did that till 1950, till the mandir was built. He was trying to lead a life just like us, so that we learn to lead a life this how he wants us to live. And even in the Prashanti Mandir, the room that Bhagavan used to live, it is just an 8 by 10 room. If you have seen, I have spoken to so many who have gone to the Prashanti Mandir on top, where Bhagavan stayed from 1950 to almost to 1993, all those 43 years, but Bhagavan stayed in the 8 by 10 room. And if you have seen that room, you have seen pictures of that room, it is just one tiny room with a cot and a bed. That's it. One cot and one table. In fact, you read accounts of it in the Satyam Sundaram, when Professor Kasturi describes how he used to go to Bhagavan every month, because he was the editor of the Sanatana Sarthi. Every month he needed to get that article from Bhagavan. All the articles that we read in Sanatana Sarthi, be it in those times the Prema Vahini, the Bharatiya Paramartha Vahini, the Upanishad Vahini, the Vidya Vahini, the Sutra Vahini, the Upanishad Vahini, everything Bhagavan himself wrote from 1953 to 1984. Every single month he wrote these articles, and later which Professor Kasturi compiled. But imagine the plight of an editor who has to go to Bhagavan and plead for an article every month. That's so difficult for him, and he had to confirm with the time, because the articles have to be dispatched. Sanatana Sarthi has to be dispatched. People have subscribed for it. You cannot delay it, and the whole procedure that has to happen after an article is given in printing, press, he has to go to Bangalore to print, etc., etc. But still, imagine his plight. He has to go every month and ask to Bhagavan for an article. And there were times when he was saying, he will just go to Bhagavan and Swami said, okay, now the article. Okay, he will go to that room and he will just come out in half an hour with a neat piece of paper which will have a mind-boggling explanation of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. One of the most philosophically obtrusive Upanishads. Of course, there were times when there was no time, so Swami just created and gave an article. That's a different thing. That professor, that G.V. Gandigode Subbarao has seen that. But that's why I'm telling how he struggled to live like a human. And if you see, even after that, after 93, Swami moved to the Yajur Mandir. Even in Yajur Mandir, where Swami moved, it was actually a green room. It was not his residence. It was a green room for the people to get dressed up during dramas. That is the room that Bhagavan went to in 1993, and he stayed there till 2005. Even in 2005, it was kind of a force exit of Bhagavan. Nobody wanted, Swami never wanted the Yajur Mandir. It was like kind of request of devotees, and Swami finally acceded to it. And it is that room where Bhagavan stayed all these years. And if you think about it, for Bhagavan, it didn't really matter which car he was going in. We saw Bhagavan, okay, Swami was going in the Mercedes or Swami was going in BMW. But I have seen Swami in 2003, 2004, when Swami started coming a Maruti 1000. It was almost a obsolete car, Maruti 1000. It used to spew out these fumes, which was so terrible. Okay, Swami never for a moment thought, oh my God, all these years I've been going in a Mercedes, I've been going in a BMW. What do people think of me? I have to go in a Maruti 100, go in a Maruti 1000. What will happen to my stature? I didn't think about it. I was feeling so terrible. I think the only time when you felt really very happy was, when Swami used to come out in the big car. You felt, no, Swami, you are the Lord of the universe. We want to see you like that. We want to see you glorious. You are the king of the world, Swami. You should have all the luxuries for the world. You should have everything for the world. You can, at your command, there is anything. Why are you not enjoying anything? You should feel bad. And here was Bhagwan. He's coming up. Those days were extremely very saddening. Why Swami? I mean, I have seen it was a time after the fracture, 2003, he was struggling to get inside the Mount housing. But he was okay for it. He will come in there. And he did that for almost a year. Then he started coming the gold part. So for Bhagwan, it didn't really matter what it was. Because that's what, the element of sacrifice that you see in Bhagwan's life, and the buttons that Swami had. The only sort of ornaments that Bhagwan had were those two gold buttons. And those two gold buttons has not been changed for the last 20 years. From the time Swami has worn them. In fact, there is a chain connecting those two buttons. The chain broke. Still Swami never agreed to change the button. You should wear the singing button. That is the Bhagwan that we are so blessed to know, that we are so blessed to be with. And if you look at the last few years of Bhagwan's life, that is where this whole concept of Swami being the Nilakantha comes so forcefully to me. Because, now when you look back, it is so revealing, saddening and enriching. In 2003, when Bhagwan underwent that fracture, when he was coming back from the hospital to Trai Vrindavan, when he was brought back, he was being taken to the first floor. It was Bhagwan's residence in the first floor of Trai Vrindavan, and there were 4 people who were taking Bhagwan in a stretcher to the first floor. And as Bhagwan was being taken, Satyajit noticed that there is some discomfort. Swami perhaps is not comfortable. Maybe he wants some change in the position. Maybe he needs something. So he goes forward and he tries to lend his ear to Bhagwan. And Bhagwan says, Churu, there are 4-5 doctors who have come. You just see that they have given coffee to me. And when Bhagwan was there, recuperating sort of in 2003, there was this boy who used to serve Bhagwan. He told me this personally just a few days ago. He never shared this. Only now probably he thought the time is good to share this. Swami in 2003 when he was on top, and he and another brother were looking up to Swami. And we know Swami should never sleep in the nights. That is a known fact. I have spoken to so many boys who used to sleep in Bhagwan's room, and Swami should never sleep in the night. You could just be awake. And I remember Swami should tell us that he used to go and put on the light in the bathroom, because in those days you knew which was Swami's room, and if Swami's room light was on, you all the time keep looking at Swami's room, and there are devotees who would not go away from that place. If the light is on in Swami's room. So Swami, after that, Swami used to put out the light in his drawing room, then he used to put out the light in his restroom, and then you take a chair and sit there. You read letters, you do God knows what. But he never slept. He's just always awake. So there was this boy who told me in 2003, after that accident and fracture, and Bhagwan was recuperating, and this boy was there serving Swami, and one night Swami wanted to be taken to the restroom. So he helped Swami, and Swami came back, and Swami sat on the cot, and this boy was sitting down, and he's been serving Swami for almost 10 years. Serving Swami means in Swami's room, and Swami told, you come and sit beside me on the cot. He said, no Swami, I cannot do that. I will sit down, Swami, please. No, you come and sit next to me. No Swami, please Swami, I will sit down. I I cannot do that. No, you come, you have to sit. You have to sit beside me. So he comes and he sits very reluctantly, he sits beside Swami. And then Swami, and he actually is trying to massage one shoulder. And suddenly Swami looks at him. And he moves back because suddenly that whole Swami's hair comes on his face, he moves back. And then Swami asks him, ఒకవేళ నేను వెళ్ళిపోతే నువ్వేం చేస్తావు? Suppose I leave, what will you do? Swami, why are you talking like this? Swami, it's just a small operation. Doctors have told you'll be alright tomorrow, day after you can go for darshan. Swami, why are you even talking? Why are you even thinking like this, Swami? Chappu. ఒకవేళ నేను లేకపోతే నువ్వేం చేస్తావు? What will you do? Suppose I'm not there. Swami, please don't even talk like this. Why are you asking me this question? He starts crying and crying. And Swami said, no, you have to tell me. Tell me what. He started crying, he had no answer. Then Swami looked at him. Swami said, నీ ఒక్క ఒక్కరికి రెడీ చేసి వెళ్తా. And prepare each one of you and then leave. This happened in 2003. And if you look at Bhagwan's life after that, you see in so many ways. In 1999 he revived the Libodh Bhavam so that we know whom he is. And then after that he starts preparing us. In stages. There were times when Bhagwan used to come for morning bhajans, and only when Bhagwan came, bhajans would start, and only when Bhagwan pushed the stool with his divine foot will the bhajan end. In whether it was 9:20 or 9:25 or 9:30, only then bhajan ended. And then slowly, that practice started that, okay, Bhagwan has come. So there were times when Bhagwan is still in the interview room, so will you start the bhajans? Yes, you start the bhajans. So even if Bhagwan is in the interview room, you learn to start the bhajans even if Bhagwan is in the interview room. So 9 o'clock bhajans started. And bhajans have to end only when Bhagwan comes and takes Aarati. So that is how the procedure contained. And there were times I remember, especially last 2-3 years, when Bhagwan used to come, if you went out, then you'd be gone many times for an hour or two, and bhajans used to go on for like 11 o'clock, 11:30. Bhagwan has not come, and as long as Bhagwan has not come, there would not be Aarati. We remember doing bhajans for 3 hours. In fact, last few years we've been doing bhajans for hours. Always it was an Akhanda bhajan. Bhagwan has to come and then take Aarati. Then slowly Bhagwan conditioned all of us to think and to get used to the fact that even if he doesn't come, we have to learn to give Aarati. There were times when Bhagwan himself used to light. Pujari will throw the plate, show the plate, and Swami would light the Aarati. Then it slowly became a practice of the boys also going to Swami and Swami lighting. Then slowly boys themselves can light. And then this whole process, after that it became mandatory that doesn't matter when Bhagwan has not come also you can do Aarati. You get used to that. But okay, so there will be times when Bhagwan may not come. In 2004, Swami, before he started coming for darshan, he said, Vedam, why Vedam is not there? And people who were around Bhagwan, who were serving Swami asking for Vedam. I mean, Vedam used to be chanted only during festival occasions. Vedam used to be chanted if there was a Dasara, if there was a birthday, before Bhagwan's discourse and speech, there used to be Vedam. But why is Swami suddenly asking for Vedam? They are totally confused because Swami is asking at 3:30 and 4 Swami Vedam. What is the meaning of Vedam? They never understood what Swami was trying to say. So nobody followed what Bhagwan is trying to convey because no one understood what Bhagwan is trying to convey. So Swami used to get upset with the people around. Don't listen to me. But they had no clue what Swami wanted. But after that day, after there was one time in 2004 when Swami said, Vedam, I won't go for darshan. No Vedam. So they had to start Vedam. So after that Vedam started, only when Vedam starts, Swami will come. So that thing continued for so many years, and then slowly it came to a point of whether Bhagwan comes or not, Vedam has to start. So that procedure continued. All I'm trying to say is, how he was preparing us from that time. And if you look at the last few years, this is what always is only when you look at it now, it becomes so profound. If you see all the years from 2007 onwards to 2010 till 2011, Swami gave himself away completely. So many yatras. I mean, you being in Puttaparthi, you really got sort of every day there is a yatra. Every day there is a yatra. It could be some Andhra district, it could be Tamil district, it could be some Haryana district, it could be Punjab district. If there is nobody, if there is nothing, then there is some overseas district. You never had a time, you never had Swami for yourself and people in Parthi or anything like that. But here was Bhagwan, every day there is a yatra. And Swami kind of institutionalized this practice of people coming to Prashanti Nilayam. And or what I'm trying to highlight is, what Bhagwan himself was undergoing. Now when I think about it, it really hits me so hard. Because my father, he's now 71. Okay? And he has led a very, very active life. He was a civil engineer. And he's a workaholic. Okay? He's led a very active life. And after he came to Parthi, he's been involved practically in any major civil work that Swami took up, be it the construction of Deenajana Pathakam, to Swami sent was tsunami, to the Gujarat earthquake, construction of practically every building after 2000 years involved until the Orissa project. Now what I'm trying to say is he was a workaholic and he would not ever think of giving his body even the slightest regard because the spirit was so high. He used to always do that. But now it has come to a phase when his body is become so delicate. It has become so delicate because the doctors say that his bones have sort of degenerated a lot because of overuse. Now we have to treat him like a flower. And he's just 71. And whenever I think about it, you think of the exertion that Swami took all these years. There was no one, there were times, when Puttaparthi started, people used to come in Gulakar. Swami would go to the other side of the river to get them. There were times when a devotee came and he was coming with his wife and Swami was holding the hand, or in one hand he was holding the hand of this person, in another hand he was holding the hand of his wife and this, hey, you don't hold the hand of my wife. That person had the audacity to tell Swami. That is what Swami has gone through. That is what Swami has gone through, sacrificing himself to be a human, to be with us, to teach us. That is how he is built, that Prashanti Nilayam. And after that, if you see, how many visits to this place. There I've seen pictures of Swami standing on car bonnet, on the roof of the car giving discourses. There are pictures Swami giving in Africa when Swami went at 1:30 in the night, he's giving darshan in Africa because people are waiting there. We have seen any number of times when we were students. Let us sleep. Swami would have come down for darshan at 5:30 in the morning. Which means what? We have to get up at 4 o'clock. Because we have community bathrooms, you have to get up and you finish breakfast. Because Swami will not be happy if you come without breakfast. So you have to finish your breakfast and then come. But Swami is out already 5:30. After 2:30 we are awake. Every day, after the evening classes, you rush to hostel because you have to finish, you forget the tiffin and all, you just have a quick wash and run because Swami will come anytime. This was that Swami, how he exerted himself all these years, never thinking about his body. Never ever thinking about his body. Towards the end of Swami's in sometime 2009-2010, one day Brother Satyajit told Swami people have come for darshan and for when he comes on for morning darshan, people have come for morning darshan. We are outside and we keep thinking, but Swami, why can't you come today? I have come all the way. What's this? You can just come home. Stupidity we think like that. So he prayed to Swami that day. This is when Swami was almost 80. And Swami said, Chala tirigam grama tirigam. I went to village and village I have gone. I have done so much. I have exerted my body so much. Chala alisipoyanu. My body has become so tired. Not able to go. When he heard that, he said, Swami, from today, you don't come, Swami. We will take your message. You don't have to go. So that is the Bhagwan we are talking about. That is the Bhagwan, the Neelakantha when we talk about. The last 1 month that Swami went through in the hospital, we think Why Swami had to go in this manner? Why Swami had to, Swami, you wanted a divine being, you could have just decided, you had said Om and then just flowers sort of appeared. But you wanted some divine exit like that. Why Swami went to the hospital, underwent all that suffering? You keep thinking about it. Why Swami, he died a normal human kind of passing. Why did he do that? When you think about it now, if you look at the Rama avatar, when Rama went, the people of Sarayu, they could not take it. When Rama went into the river, a lot of people just ran into the river. They also thought it's like sort of suicide. A lot of people just went, they could not just take it. When Krishna went, and they went through very, very, some hunter, the Krishna which saved Arjuna from the biggest of weapons. When all hunter hits one arrow and Krishna is gone. Okay. And after Krishna went, what happened? Utter chaos. Utter chaos, and the Yadava clan killed each other and the whole thing was decimated. There's no remnant of Yadava clan. It became like that. But what Swami wanted was, as I was telling you, he wanted to prepare each one of us for that. So he ensured that bhajans happen. He ensured if you go to mandir and one day and he is not there, so you can reconcile to the fact that okay, I have to connect now to Swami within just Swami is there. You go to mandir and you sit there and you keep reminiscing. You imagine the darshan in your mind. You imagine, you internalize Swami. He was putting us through that process of internalizing it. And that time, if you look at the 1 month, that suffering that he underwent, I feel it was, he died such a human way so that for us to take it, it came to a point when we were also reaching breaking points. We're reaching breaking point and imagine the whole, the movement of prayer that the whole world was engulfed with at that time. At that time, people forgot politics. People forgot who is a good singer, who is not a good singer, who is a good Vedam person, who is not a good Vedam person. Let us do bhajans together. Let us do Vedam together. Doesn't matter who goes to which samiti. Let us pray together. Doesn't matter he's a Hindu, he's a Muslim. Let's pray together. Let's pray together. Let's do something together. Swami is ours. We have to do something for Swami. The whole movement was so charged up. There were prayers in Gurudwara, there were prayers in the mosque, there were prayers in every little place of worship where there was even slightest of love for Bhagwan, it was there. It was the movement of prayer that Swami created to show us how Sai movement should be run. That's how one wanted the Sai movement to be. That's the energy that prayer can create when you have that one focus. Swami used to say that realization can be attained in a fraction of a second also. Swami said, see, a room is dark for 10 years. When you put on the light, it doesn't take 10 years for the light to go. Put on the light, immediately there is darkness. Immediately there is brightness. Put on the switch and there is brightness. And Swami says, if you go to in the dream state, suppose in one, you are sleeping. Suppose suppose you are sleeping and you wake up at 1:35 and you go to the restroom, you come back and you sleep again, and now you slide into a dream, and in the dream you see that you have grown up, that you have done your education. Now you got a good job, and now you have your own family, and everything is so beautiful. And then you have a son now, and as the dream proceeds, your son is now grown up, is playing with his friends, and suddenly the son gets hurt and he starts crying. And when the son starts crying, you get up to start. Okay? Now, Swami says, all these things that happened in the dream happened in just 5 minutes. You got up at 1:45, suddenly you got up. Okay. Now, in physical years, what would have taken 40 years happened in the dream in just 5 minutes. Right? It just happened in the dream in 5 minutes. So Swami says that is what is the dream state. You go one step further, there is called Turyavastha. Now in Turyavastha is again much beyond time and space. So what happened 40 years could happen in 5 minutes in dream state. In Turyavastha, what you think may take 10 years can happen in a second. Because the Turyavastha is beyond time and space, and God who bestows us the realization is also beyond time and space. So what I'm trying to say is the energy that we create can do magic for us. And that is what Swami is trying to convey. We say the golden era has come. How will that come? Only when we together create that energy. And Swami has done so much, has shown us how to create that energy. Let me go back to this final moments. So when I think about it, Swami's aspect of Neelakantha, all the suffering that he was going, I remember as his yatra was happening, there were so many days when Bhagwan came for darshan, his feet actually would not be swollen, his feet would be very normal. Okay? And as he sat for 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, slowly you would see that his feet is getting swollen. People who close by have noticed that feet is getting swollen. But he would still sit. He would still sit. And he did that entire year, 2008, 2009. He really wanted to give himself completely. Whoever comes, let everyone have that one moment to Swami. Let everyone have one glimpse of Swami. Let everyone have something to cherish. When I am not there, something so that they can meditate upon, something that will inspire them all their life, something which will inspire them to follow his message, something which will bind them. So Swami ensured that everyone has, at least anybody who came to Prasad, he encouraged everyone to come. People came, all yatras kept on happening, and he kept on giving. That is, it was so easy. It almost seemed like anybody can. You want blessings and Vibhuti Prasad and blessings? Come with the program. Very simple. Come with the program, guaranteed. It was almost like that. Come with the program, you can sit in front. Doesn't mean you get some singers, no problem. Come with the program to Bhakti. Simple. You will get your blessings. It was so simple. We had no clue how he was little by little destroying himself so that we have one memory. We have one moment. And then I remember the last darshan, 20th March 2011. That was not the last darshan, that was the last Sunday darshan of Bhagwan. That day, we just started at 6:30 and bhajans were going on. Swami had not come. Bhajan started 6 o'clock and 6:30 Swami had not come, 7 o'clock Bhagwan had not come, and then Bhagwan came after 7:30. There was some movement and now there was hope, and finally the hope materialized into blessing and Bhagwan came out. And that day Bhagwan was extremely slow as he went around giving darshan. Extremely slow, and everybody's prayer was answered. If you had a letter Bhagwan took it, if you had anything to offer to Bhagwan, Bhagwan accepted that, and he went the entire round of Sai Kulwant's hall very slowly, acceding to everyone's request, and then he came to the student block and he was very happy. He was spending time with every student who had anything to speak to Bhagwan. He was granted that opportunity, and after Swami finished the full round, Swami again started taking one more round. Okay, so when Bhagwan again states one more round, then what you generally think is, okay, maybe Swami wants to return today. Because Swami has not been keeping well, so maybe Swami wants to return today. So Swami started going again in that direction. But to everyone's delight, Swami turned. So Swami turned again right, and he took another round. Another complete round, again going very slowly, again blessing anyone who had anything. Now we change places and okay, your prayer is answered, now let my chance. Everyone's prayer is answered. Everyone who had something to offer, anything to Bhagwan was accepted that day, and he finished everything. He finished all the darshan lines. Then he came back. Now we thought maybe Swami is not going to come. No, Swami is going to return. 2 rounds, that is those days when Bhagwan is not coming for darshan. The 2 rounds is like enough. It was a bonanza. Okay. And people who came on that Sunday were like, oh my God, we never thought we'd get this blessing. And Swami finished his 2 rounds, and then Swami came on the stage. And now, wow, fantastic. Now Swami is going to sit on the stage. Okay, so all can see Swami. And as soon as he came and sat on the stage, Swami started blessing the first birthday boy. Now the birthday boy, we know always how they sit there with all the trays and the spices, and that is their chance to get blessings once a year. On your birthday you go in front of Bhagwan and get blessings. So this birthday boy goes in front and he gets blessings from Bhagwan. And Swami blesses him very nicely. And then after he blesses the first boy, the second boy is looking at Bhagwan with anticipation and permission. Does he have the permission to go ahead? Because every time you ask for Swami's permission before you go to him. So this boy was looking at Bhagwan, and then Swami motioned him, yes, come. The second boy went with his tray, and Swami blessed him. Swami took his letter, he had his namaskar, and Swami sent him back. The third boy again looked at Swami with expectation. Swami called him too. Again Swami blessed him, the third boy. Okay? And everyone is feeling okay, fine. 3 boys, today Swami is very generous, 3 boys Swami is blessed, fine. Now Swami can sit and listen bhajans, we will have nice darshan. Swami calls for the 4th boy. Swami doesn't stop there. Swami calls for the 5th boy. 6th boy. Now there is a clamor, oh my God, Swami blessed 6 boys. There are fellows who have not come, they never heard Swami bless 6 boys, 7 boys, and because Swami's actions are very slow, it was taking pretty long time. So there are boys who started thinking now whether they should go back to hostel quickly in a scooter, get their birthday dress, because birthday is the day when Swami blesses you, not the actual birthday. Everyone's birthday cannot be on that day. It is just that one opportunity in a day, in a year you get. So it doesn't matter when is your birthday. If you're not gone, just go ahead and take your blessing. So now people start contemplating, can they go back to the hostel and get that race? They saw me blessing the 6th boy, Swami blessing the 7th boy. Now people, the thought has converted into action. People start rushing to the hostel. People have got their birthday trays, and people, by the time Swami is blessing the 10th or 11th boy, all networking done, and people have suddenly, there are a big row there, almost 10 boys now are ready with trays. Okay, so now Swami is blessing the 8th boy, the 9th boy, the 10th boy, 11th boy, the 12th boy, 13th boy. It's going on, and now the primary school team, they see that, oh my God, why are we being left out? So they just simply barge in. And Swami blesses them very nicely, very happy with them. They followed Bhagwan's feet. Swami is so happy, so he blesses them also. Then thought, okay, fine, primary school Swami is blessed, so now we can rest. Swami calls again. The 14th boy gets up. 15th boy. 16th boy, 17th boy, 18th boy, 19th boy, 20th boy, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. The queue is never ending. Swami is constantly blessing. 31st. 32nd. Swami, please, it's okay, you are blessed enough. Swami, you have done, it's okay, Swami, please. You can relax now, Swami, please enjoy bhajans. 32nd, 34th, 35th. If you looked at Bhagwan in those days, I was sitting right below. It was such an ordeal for Bhagwan to actually raise his hand. Because he was so frail at that time. Every time he had to raise his hand, it was an effort. It was an Himalayan effort for him to raise his hand. Okay, but he did it. And the boy who takes it, he has to really put his head pretty low so that there is least amount of strain for Bhagwan. But for Bhagwan to take that rice grain and put it on his head to accept his letter, it was an ordeal. You should see that. You're feeling, on one hand, you're feeling so happy, rejoicing, okay, so many of my brothers are getting blessings. On the other hand, your heart was just tearing apart. It was a tearing anguish. Why is Bhagwan doing this? He can rest. It was so difficult for him, but still he was doing it. He kept on doing that. 32nd, 36th, 37th, 38th, 39th, 40th. Everyone. Then that joy just disappeared after some time. Because when you looked at Bhagwan, why is he doing this? Swami, you came for darshan, that was more than enough for us. Swami, you just please sit there. Okay, looking at you, that gives us so much joy. You don't have to do this, Swami. But you did that not once, but 43 times. And then, in the end, we know what happened. In the end, when Bhagwan in those days used to raise his hand in blessings, he used to always do it. You do it like this, or you do it in one hand, or you do it like this. So that day, we know what Bhagwan did. He raised his one hand, and Swami's body was really very faint, so he raised his one hand. And I thought, sitting there, that because his hand was shaking, so I thought, Swami needed support from the other hand. Swami definitely needed some support. So I thought this hand was giving him support. Then suddenly Swami did this. Because I thought, okay, Swami is probably, he's just taking that support, he's not able to hold his hand. Okay? But he was firm. And he did it on one side, and then with full energy he did it on the other side. And suddenly there was stunned silence. All was looking wrong. Why did Bhagwan do that? What does it mean? And every time we have been so happy to see Bhagwan doing this. That's when people need to clap, Jaygolo will happen in so many quarters of cyclone now. Why did Bhagwan do this? Even at that time it was very confusing. All his discourses, right from the time Bhagwan started giving discourses, Bhagwan never addressed the gathering as Priya Bhaktulara. He never said dear devotees, he never said dear brothers and sisters, he never said ladies and gentlemen. He always said Divyatma Swarupala, Prematma Swarupala. That was the way he saw each one of us. I think that is the why, he blessed us all the time. In spite of what we are, Swami has blessed us. It's only because he saw the goodness in us. Whatever little bit goodness is that he saw. That is why we had the chance. Otherwise, I don't think any of us deserve to be in his presence. Even if we deserve to have anything more than one glimpse, or even one glimpse, I don't know if we all deserve. But because he saw only himself in us, he stretched himself to any extent. Then, that same Swami, now all that he's preached all his life, that you have to see each person as God, you have to see each person as Divyatma, you have to see each person as Prematma. He goes down to that level. Look at that humility of the Lord. He wants to go down to tell us that this is the way you should treat each other, this is the way you have to see. Just like I have always told you, you are also God, and that is how I have treated you, that's how I have blessed you. That is how we should treat each other. Today I am reinforcing that in a more powerful way, in a way that we can never ever forget. Never forget the other person is God. That is what is spirituality. That is what I have been preaching all my life. Never ever forget that. If you can understand that, if you can live that principle, there is nothing more needed for you in this life. If you can see that other person with love, if you can see that other person with concern, if you can see that other person as someone who is very much a part of me. Just like Swami, the Lingodhvam is again, the significance of the Lingodhvam is, the lingam, as Bhagwan said, is a symbol of creation. With the cosmic consciousness, the lingam emerges from the Creator. Okay, it is a symbol of the creation in the hands of the Creator. And you imagine the amount of pain that the Lord undergoes perform the superhuman cycle, and then it shows that umbilical cord that is there between the lingam and the creator, the creation and the creator. Just like when the child is in the womb, when the mother eats, the mother eats for herself as well as for the child. The mother breathes for herself as well as for the child, and even after the child is born, the mother automatically knows when the infant needs something. The connection is so invisible and so strong. You can never find any connection. Now imagine God. God's connection is 1,000 mothers, million mothers. That is the connection that he has for creation. That is the concern he has for each one of us. Many of us have experienced, many of us may not have experienced. In 1999, during the sports meet, I was there on that occasion when Bhagwan was coming for the procession. They had the grand procession of the sports meet, and suddenly we all saw that Bhagwan, as he was blessing everyone sitting on the chair, suddenly he got up in his enthusiasm to bless the devotees on the galleries. And as he got up, something happened and Swami suddenly fell. I remember very clearly that scene, 99 sports meet. And when we saw that, we thought, okay, something happened. But again, Swami got up. And then Swami started the procession. As usual, the procession Swami came to the Santi Vedika, and Swami sat through the sports meet, the entire sports meet. And as was the practice, Swami used to go down the stage after the performance to give a group photograph to the campuses. The Anandpur campus would finish the program, the Swami would go down and give a group photograph. The Vrindavan campus would do a program, Swami would go down and give a group photograph. The only difference that people around Swami noticed on that occasion was when Swami came backstage, most of the time Swami would go to the green room to see what are the refreshments that are arranged for the VIPs on the stage. Swami was very particular that they have been taken care of. So you see what the boys serving them, and if they have everything there to serve. So that day when Bhagwan came, when Bhagwan saw the Swami is going to the green room, and that day the Swami would never go into the restroom. Swami went not once, twice, but 4 times. Swami went to the restroom. No one had any clue what was going on. I mean, it was very unusual for Swami to go to the restroom, but Swami just went, okay, fine. And Swami came and sat. And after the sports meet, the morning session was over, and in sports meet there are so many boys, there are so many different groups. Someone would do a gymnastics, someone would do acrobatics, someone would do some stunts, and someone would do skating and etc. So all these groups actually do not get a photograph with Swami in the Hillview Stadium. There's only a group photograph. So all the boys actually rush to the mandir. As Bhagwan's car returns from the Hillview Stadium, you rush to the mandir and you make your own groups according to the performance you have done. And you want group pictures with Swami. Skating group picture with Swami, dancing group picture with Swami. So Swami should always oblige. And so that day also, Swami went through the entire grill. He didn't want to disappoint anyone, so he went through the entire grill. He blessed everyone. And Swami retired. He went again in the evening to primary school performance. He saw that and he came back. No one had any clue. When Bhagwan spoke after the sports meet in the valedictory function day, then Swami mentioned that when he actually fell that day, he incurred a lot of hurt, he incurred a lot of pain, and there was a lot of maybe fracture, I don't know what, but he incurred something very terrible. And Swami said, in the process, actually I averted a calamity that was to come upon one boy. In fact, that year, before the Vrindavan campus came, Swami had told the warden, this year Vrindavan campus need not come. And then Swami, please, every year we've been doing, how can we not do it? Swami, please give us the chance. No, this year no one in Vrindavan campus. No, Swami, we have to come, Swami, please, Swami. So finally Swami relented and Swami allowed them to come. And when they came, so Swami allowed that performance. They had some stunts. In that discourse, Swami mentioned that he fell and he underwent a lot of cuts and a lot of pains inside. And the boy, one of the boys who was actually walking behind Swami at that time, serving Swami, I heard this directly from him. He had this thought that, why is Swami talking about it? I mean, it was such a small thing. Swami just got up and, Swami had a jerk and he just fell down. But why is Swami, talking so much about it? Why is Swami making a big thing out of it? He in his stupidity, he thought about it like that. Why is Swami talking about it? It's okay, you get up, some jerk happens, you fall down. And the discourse was over. Swami went into the interview room and Swami called Narsimurti sir, who was at that time the warden of the Vrindavan campus. So generally they would take instructions from Bhagwan when the boys can go back to Vrindavan. So when warden sir went, he started pleading with Swami and seeking pardon and forgiveness because he didn't heed to Bhagwan's orders when Bhagwan had told him that this year let there be no Vrindavan campus. But he pleaded on behalf of the boys and now he was regretting because Swami mentioned all that. He said, Swami, if only I had listened to your advice, your body wouldn't have gone through all that you went through and all that you mentioned that day. Wouldn't have gone through all that. I don't know why I did not respond. Please forgive me. And that day when Swami called Narsimurti sir inside, before he went, Swami suddenly called this boy who actually serving Swami. Swami called this boy. So this boy also went in. that time. And when Narasimha sir was pleading with Bhagwan, Swami at that time suddenly looked at his body and then he raised his sleeve. And when Swami did that, he saw the deep gashes that were there on Bhagwan's body, blood stains, very deep gashes on Bhagwan's body. And Swami said, that day the pain was so much and there was so much that I underwent in the spine. And there was a lot of blood coming out. I didn't know what to do. That's why I was going to the restroom and I didn't tell anyone. So he was taking those handkerchiefs. And himself, without letting anyone know, himself removing that blood. And no one knew what he was going through. He said, and that day, this boy, it was so terrible. We are so stupid. We want seeing is believing. Only when we see, we believe. With God, believing is seeing. And he was so terrible. And what I'm trying to say is, we have no clue of what the Lord undergoes for our sake. He is that Nilakanta. For every instance of Prahlada that we know, for every instance of Mirabai that we know, for every instance of Gajendra that we know and read our scriptures, every instance of one of our lives, one instance that we know, there are countless, a million that we do not know, and that the Lord is himself undergoing. Because he is trying to teach us. And that is what the Lord underwent when he came down as a human. It is so difficult for him who is beyond time and space to confine himself. And he did it so assiduously and meticulously and diligently, so that we at least take that effort to see what is his life and then see how we can transform his life in some ways into our life, into our message. Karthik was mentioning why I have come to Parthi. I came, this is another Parthi. So I came here. I came actually to interview one person by name Mr. Kalyana. He was the personal secretary of Gandhiji during the last 4 years of Gandhiji's physical being on earth. So 1944 to 1948 he was the personal secretary of Gandhiji. And as I was talking to him, it was so astounding to see a personality like that. He's 91 years old. He does everything himself. He doesn't have a maid servant. Till now there is not a maid servant in the house. Everything he does himself. He's 91 years old. And for the last, I don't know how many years since the building has been there, from 4 o'clock in the morning, he starts sweeping that road. The road in front of him. He starts sweeping that road. From 4 in the morning, he does that till 8 in the morning. After he finishes sweeping that road, then he comes, the whole building, all the staircase and the railings he sweeps. He takes a mopping cloth and he cleans the entire staircase. He does that till 8 o'clock. Then he has a garden. So now after that he goes around watering the plants, cutting the plants, tending to the plants, and so that goes on for another 3-4 hours. Then he goes on top of the flat, on building, there is a vegetable garden. There he grows vegetables. He showed me how he has grown bindi, and he cooks his food himself. There is no other person, he lives alone. He cooks his food himself. He eats the vegetables that he grows, the same brinjal and the bindi that he grows, the greens that he grows there. It's enough for me. So he grows that, and that is what he eats. Till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, he is there looking after the gardens and cleanliness of this entire building. And what else does he do? In the morning when he's cleaning, he collects from the road all the discarded items, all the Tetra packs, all the water bottles. There is someone in the building who drinks probably whiskey, so all these drink bottles, everything he collects, he segregates them. Then I asked him, how do you sustain yourself? You don't have any income. What is that? You see, I'll show you. He showed me all the bits of paper and everything, every postal that comes, anywhere he can collect a bits of, he collects all those bits of paper and he tells, what? When I sell this one, I get 50. collects all these whiskey bottles and all these plastic bottles. I sell this also. I will get at least 30-40 rupees. Then he collects all the other discarded items there. He showed me all the cardboard boxes, everything that he gives. This also I sell. This also gives me good money. And then he sleeps only for half an hour or 1 hour in the night. I was just talking to him. He said it's time for my rest, afternoon sleep. So I was with him till 2:30. He told just give me 5 minutes. So 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock he just went lay down. Even I was making one phone call and making some arrangements. 5 minutes rest. That is his nap. 5 minutes rest. Now he'll get back to his work, get back to his correspondence. He has to go around giving talks about Gandhi, teaching about Gandhi's mission and everything. And in the night, he gets up 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning because he does all the exercise that Ramdev preaches. That has helped him a lot. He's come to Bhagwan in 1959, and after that, every year he's come to Prashanthi Nilayam. His daughter comes to Prashanthi Nilayam every year for doing seva in the ladies' wing. When I saw his life, and then I spoke to one of the persons who lives ground floor, 35 years, one youngster, young family, just married a year ago and their daughter. Okay. And every time the youngster's wife is not there, he will call the youngster and give him dosa, make for him upma, give him coffee. You need anything? I can do for you. When his wife was in the family way, he rearranged the garden so that his wife can have a nice walking path. It is so astounding that such a person is still there today in flesh and blood. Now, imagine, what is his inspiration? His inspiration is Gandhiji. What is Gandhiji's inspiration? Gandhiji's inspiration is God. Gandhiji's inspiration is from Brahma. Gandhiji's inspiration is from Bhagavad Gita. Gandhiji's inspiration is from truth. Gandhiji's inspiration is from love. Gandhiji's inspiration is from the fundamental tenets of spirituality. He derived all his strength from spirit, from the soul. It was Swami who gave that energy to Gandhi. Gandhi was not blessed to see Swami. The Swami who gave that energy to Gandhi, and look at this Kalyanam, inspiration from Gandhi is leading such a life. And when you look at our life, you see so blessed that Swami gave us darshan, Swami called us, he touched us, he spoke to us, he gave us gifts to the we can cherish. We have touched him, we have seen him, we have sung with him, we have eaten with him, we have been contemporaries of the avatar, which is absolutely precious. When you think about it, it just hit me. I mean, what are we doing? मधुवन खुशबू देता है, सागर सावन देता है, जीना उसका जीना है, जो औरों को जीवन देता है, मधुवन खुशबू देता है. For those of you who can understand Hindi, you know what this song is contained. मधुवन खुशबू देता है. The garden, the rose garden gives us fragrance. सागर सावन देता है. The ocean that gives us the rain. जीना उसका जीना है जो औरों को जीवन देता है. Only that life is worth called a life. Only that life is worth lived when you have given life to others. जीना उसका जीना है जो औरों को जीवन देता है. सूरज ना बन पाए तो बन के दीपक जलता चल, फूल मिले अंगारे, सच की राहों पे चलता की राहों पे चलता चल, दिल वो दिल है जो औरों को अपनी धड़कन देता है, जीना उसका जीना है, जो औरों को जीवन देता है, मधुबन खुशबू देता है. Swami was that son. He was that son who just burned himself every day. Every day he burned himself so that our lives can lighten, our lives can brighten, our lives will experience a little less of sorrow, our life can experience even a moment of joy, our lives can have something to get away from the trials and tribulations of life. We come to Prashanthi and we think about him, so okay, I surrender everything at the lotus feet. He makes us, he burned himself so that our lives can become brighter. So even if we cannot become the sun, सूरज ना बन पाए तो बन के दीपक जलता चल. We can become a candle, we can become a lamp and still do our bit to lighten and brighten the lives of others. And that is what Bhagwan did, that is what Sai Shiva did, that is what Sai Shiva does even now. For every act, as I mentioned, that we know of, there are countless that we do not know, and now we do not have the chance to see him physically take upon someone's illness, physically see how one boy's asthma next day is not there because Swami himself is coughing, physically see how some boy, I remember in the interview that Bhagwan gave me in 2002 or something, 2002 maybe. Swami, when we went, Swami that day called us for an interview, parents were leaving and he called us and I rushed from home, from the hostel, and Swami said, "You have fever, no?" And just 2 days ago, I was not feeling well. I knew I was not feeling well. There was a slight temperature, but I didn't bother much. I didn't give it much. And somehow, you just think about something and you forget. And I let it go. Only when Bhagwan mentioned that, then only I realized, oh my God, well, here is someone. He knew what was happening to me in the hostel. And at that occasion, he took that opportunity to reveal it to me because I went into the interview. He cannot keep doing that every time. Today I removed you had that problem in job, I solved it. Today, you had your problem with school, I solved it. Today, you had your problem with the boss, I solved it. He doesn't do that every day. How many things he can do? He does it because the mother doesn't cook and say, see, I have done that for you. You like it? See, I have done this for you. He doesn't do that. Mother just does it spontaneously. That's how Bhagwan does it. There's the famous story of the footprint, when the person who the story of footprints, when the person who goes in the beach and there he sees that there are two sets of footprints and he thinks that okay, all along me there was Swami and God and me with me. There's two sets of footprints and suddenly he sees there is only one set of footprints and he says, God, what is this? Those were the most trying times in my life. Those are times when I needed you the most. Those were the times when I really pushed to a corner. I needed you, Lord. Why did you desert me at that time? There was one set of footprint there. Is that the time to desert me? And then God says, hello, that was the time I was carrying you. That's why there's only one set of footprints. So that is the Lord. And He carried all our burden. He carried everything that He did, everything that He can for our sake. And He destroyed Himself in the process so that we can remake ourselves. So that He tried to lead an ordinary life as a human so that we learn to make our lives extraordinary. And just when I saw Swami and Shiva, this is what came, I thought I should share with you. I hope I have done justice. I seek your pardon if in any way I have not lived up to the expectations. What I had thought of speaking actually is very different. I actually completely strayed away from what the topic that I had given. Something else came and I just thought I should share this. And I thank you all for your patient listening. And I thank Bhagwan for giving me this beautiful opportunity to come to this land and be among you and to think about Him, to reiterate within myself what He stands for and what we should stand for, what we should stand for. so much. Just for your information, since I work in radio, I thought I should let you know this. On Ugadi Day, we are launching a new device. It is called Sai Touch. So this device is, I think last time you heard about it, right? Oh, he was there. Naveen Lathur told me. Okay, so I just thought I'd reiterate that. Oh, okay. No, basically this is a device where we are trying to see, because we produce a lot of content in radio and there is always a gap in the sense that people who are not internet savvy, who are not used to going up to the website, who are not used to using internet, they really do not know how to listen to all the programs that we create. So we were looking for a solution, and by Bhagwan's grace something has come about. So we are coming out with a device which is called Sai Touch, where you can, very easily you can listen to all the radio side streams, all the 6 streams that we have on radio side, 6 channels. So one click of a button, you can actually listen to all of them. Okay, so we are coming up with this device. So we are launching it on Ugadi Day. The price will be between 4,000 and 5,000. And so those of you who are interested, you can make use of it. Because the only reason why I am sharing this is it's so important now for us to dwell on Swami's teachings. It's so important now for us to dwell on his message. And the more methods we have, the more avenues we have, we should make use of it. We will make use of technology as much as we can to spread his message and to transform our lives, transform our inner self. So I thought I should let you know. Thank you so much.
Sairam. So thank you, Sai Brother Bishop. Wonderful, scintillating speech. And I think this time what you have spent with us is not enough. We need a full session of 4 to 5 hours. Maybe on a Sunday we can call you whenever you are coming to Chennai again, and we will have more Swami's glory and experiences. And also we can have one-to-one study circle type of session. So whenever you are coming to Chennai, please keep us posted so that you will have one more opportunity to get you to Sai Sahara. So I now request Dr. Sundarajan to give a small memento as a token of love and affection from Sai Sahara. Sairam.